This is Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review, and I am ready to preview CFL Week 3. Games this week on Thursday and Friday, July the 7th and July the 8th. So let's get right to it. Let's start with the two games on Thursday. Winnipeg taking on Hamilton. We've got a battle of 0-2 Winnipeg versus 1-1 Hamilton. And to me, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a team that I thought was going to be a bet against team, one of the worst teams in the CFL coming into the season, and it has played out exactly to form so far for the Blue Bombers. It has been a rough first two games for them. The offense hasn't gotten on track. Drew Willie's been under constant pressure. The offensive line, a major concern for me for Winnipeg coming into the season, has not lived up to the bill. Their defense was gashed last week by Calgary on the ground and through the air. A great balance that the Stampeders brought, and Winnipeg had no answers for it. It's just been a very bad football team. Plain and simple. Fundamentally, not tackling well, mistakes, turnovers, ineffective, not able to stay on the field offensively, too many 2-and-outs, and as a result, we're just seeing some really bad football here from Winnipeg. Now they got to go on the road, face the Hamilton Ticats, a team that's not going to be in a very good mood. They won their opener against Toronto, spoiling the home debut of the Argos at their new stadium, BMO Field, but Ticats flat out laid an egg last week. Let's call it out for what it is. It was a brutal effort. 28-3 against the BC Lions at home on Canada Day. Nothing went right. Jeremiah Masoli couldn't get anything going throwing the football. He was under pressure. He didn't have his feet set. He was skipping the ball a lot before in front of the receiver. It was just an ugly day for the offense. They had no ground game whatsoever, and the defense started out playing okay, but by the second half, they got worn down. They were just on the field too much, and that's when BC was finally able to break the game wide open. So, you got two teams looking to bounce back. I still think Hamilton's a capable team. They're going to get better when Zach Collaros comes back. Until then, they're just hoping to, sort of tread water with Masoli until Collaros comes back. I want no part of Winnipeg. If I were to bet this game side perspective, Hamilton is a 9-point favorite right now. I'd have to lay the points. I really have no faith right now in Winnipeg. We've seen some upward movement actually in this total. It opened 51, and it's about 52.5 right now across the board. Winnipeg has hinted at playing with some up-tempo offense because it worked well for the Blue Bombers when they ran a little bit of no-huddle late in the game against Calgary last week. So that's probably why we've seen a little bit of an upward tick in this total. Not going to be easy against Hamilton's defense on the road, but maybe Winnipeg maybe changing things up with their offensive philosophy. It certainly couldn't hurt based on their offensive woes in the first 2 weeks of the season. Next game on Thursday is the Toronto Argonauts taking on the BC Lions. The Toronto Argonauts 1-1 and the BC Lions 2-0. It's great to have a preseason opinion of a team and then have that opinion really play out to perfection, and that's what's happened with BC. I thought this team would be improved coming into the season, a much better team, and they've started off 2-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread, a great beginning to the year for them. Their defense is tremendous so far. Number one in the CFL through 2 weeks. In points allowed, allowing just over 10 points per game. Second in total yards, rushing yards, and passing yards allowed. So this BC defense looks to be the real deal so far. Solomon Elimimian, having him back on the field at linebacker, one of the biggest impact players defensively in the CFL. That's helped this BC team immensely, having Wally Buono, the legend, back on the sideline as the head coach, a guy that's only had 4 losing seasons in 22 as a CFL head coach. That has mattered for this BC team. So they're just playing well. Jonathan Jennings isn't being asked to do too much, but he's not making mistakes. He's being effective. He's protecting the football, not turning it over, and as a result, BC's had a chance to win these 2 games, and they have. They've looked impressive. I don't want to step in front of BC. I had winning tickets on BC in each of the first 2 weeks, and I'm not ready to step in front of them here. This is a very good football team playing well. Yeah, you worry maybe slightly about a letdown after 2 wins to start the season, but back home in BC, I think they're still going to be able to have a good effort here. Toronto, on the other hand, give them credit for winning in Saskatchewan last week, 30-17, but the Rough Rider miscues were as much a factor in that Toronto win as anything. The Argos did play better. They moved the football. Ricky Ray, they protected a lot better for Ricky Ray, but they are going to face a very good BC defense, which has gotten good pressure on opposing quarterbacks so far this season. Going to be a much tougher test, and again, if Ricky Ray is forced to scramble, that's when he's not effective. He's not a mobile quarterback at this stage of his career. So I think if you're BC, you try to crash the pocket and make Ricky Ray have to scramble, because he's not good at that. And I think even though Toronto's offensive line, which was not good against Hamilton and was better last week, can they keep it up against a BC defense, which has been just fantastic so far and great at pressuring the quarterback? That's a big concern, especially with an aging guy like Ricky Ray under center. So I actually think this game will end up being a little bit lower scoring as well. And then look to this game staying under the total. It's about 50, 49.5, mostly 50 across the board right now, the total. BC 2-0 to the under so far this season, riding that strong defense, and they might be able to ride that strong defense here. So might be a lower scoring game. Look under the total maybe between those two teams, the Argos and Lions, on Thursday night. Let's move over to Friday's slate, July 8th. These two games, starting with Calgary against Ottawa. How about the 2-0 Ottawa Red Blacks, a team that I thought was taking a step back this year? Well, a big reason they have not taken a step back so far in 2016 is the play of Trevor Harris, the quarterback. I mean, what can you say about how awesome he has been? How about an 82% completion rate for Trevor Harris? How about a 158 quarterback rating? How about 6 touchdowns and no interceptions for Trevor Harris so far this season since taking over from Henry Burris halfway through week 1? He's been just fantastic. I mean, making plays on the run, too. He rolled out to his right and made a brilliant throw to Greg Ellingson for a touchdown last week in their win against Montreal. He's just feeling it right now. He's confident. He's playing at a high level. And the offensive line is doing a good enough job to protect for Trevor Harris. So as a result, this team clicking on all cylinders right now at 2-0, and now they return home after those 2 road wins for their home opener at TD Place. And it's not going to be an easy task facing the Calgary Stampeders, a perennial contender for the Grey Cup year in and year out, and as a Calgary team that bounced back from a road loss to BC in week 1, and that road loss to BC in week 1 doesn't look so bad with the way the Lions have played so far in their 2-0 start. So no shame in Calgary losing that game. They got back on track with a 36-22 win over Winnipeg at home last week, and it wasn't as close as the score indicates. I mean, that was a 36-9 game for Calgary at one point. Winnipeg got some late touchdowns to make that game closer than it could have been. So really, just a tremendous start to the season here for the Calgary Stampede, or much better game, I should say, last week for Calgary. Bo Levi Mitchell on track. Jerome Messam was able to run the football effectively. The defense should still be one of the better defenses in the CFL. They had a good game against BC, even though they didn't win that game. It was the offense that couldn't get things going, and the defense, for the most part, shut down Winnipeg last week. Winnipeg got those 2 late garbage touchdowns, but Calgary was guilty, I think, of taking their foot off the gas pedal a bit with a huge lead in that game. So still good performance from the Calgary defense. And that Calgary defense versus the red-hot quarterback for Ottawa, Trevor Harris, who's been phenomenal. I mean, you can't undersell it. He has been that good for Ottawa so far here in the first couple weeks of the season. So I'm reluctant to go against Ottawa. I think it's a little bit of a better spot for Calgary because they worry about Ottawa back home after a letdown. They might be a little flat laying egg like Hamilton did in their home opener last week. So it's a better spot for Calgary, but I'm not going against Trevor Harris in a pick-em price range. He's finding ways to play well, finding ways to win games for Ottawa right now. So it's a tough game to call for me this week in that game. It might be a game actually where you see points scored in it, but again, total's pretty high, 52.5 pretty much with the total in that game. That's a pretty high number. So in the end, leaned maybe a little bit to the over, but not a real strong opinion. And we're going to wrap up our look at Week 3 here in the CFL, our betting preview with my Play of the Week. We're 1-1 on Play of the Week so far. Had a winner in Week 1. We dropped the Play of the Week. Calgary and Winnipeg did not stay under the total last week thanks to really an abysmal performance by Winnipeg's defense. Calgary's defense showed up, but Winnipeg's didn't. So we're 1-1. We'll look to get a winner in the books with our CFL Week 3 Play of the Week. And we're going to go to the Saskatchewan-Edmonton game, the finale for the Week 3 schedule on Friday night for our Play of the Week. You know, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are a team that I had circled as a bet-on team. I like Chris Jones. I believe in the guy, the new head coach and GM with the Roughriders. I think he's going to make this team better. It was just a question of how soon they improve. And I think this team is going to be highly motivated. They did lose 30-17 last week against Toronto, but boy, you've really got to do a solid job dissecting that game properly. Because if you look at just the final score, 30-17 Saskatchewan loss, you're going to say, wow, they didn't play that well, did they? Well, hold on now. They made mistakes. The turnovers were a killer. They had way too many dumb penalties. That was a big-time problem as well for Saskatchewan in that game. But when you look at it, They didn't play it quite as bad as that score would indicate. Toronto got out to an early 14-0 lead. They got a punt return touchdown, or a great punt return that set them up inside the 10-yard line for their first touchdown. So it was a gimme. They, starting the drive inside the 10. What do you expect is going to happen? Second Toronto touchdown was a big pass play from Ricky Ray to Vidal Hazelton, 14-0, and before you could blink, Saskatchewan's in a hole trying to come back. And really from that point on, Saskatchewan's defense shut down Toronto. I mean, Toronto's other touchdown was a Bryant Moniz fumble deep in their own zone with Saskatchewan trying to go for it on 3rd and 1. The Saskatchewan backup quarterback fumbles the football. Toronto recovers and runs it in for a touchdown. So they had a defensive touchdown there. And other than that, Saskatchewan's defense played pretty well. Saskatchewan actually outgained Toronto 389 to 252 in total yards. Outgained them by over 130 yards, even though they lost 30 to 17. They didn't play that bad. What they failed to do, Saskatchewan, is they failed to play a clean game. Turnovers were an issue. Penalties were an issue. Miscues were an issue. Drop passes were an issue. Darian Durant would put the ball right in a receiver's hands and he'd drop it. It was just one of those games, new coach, a little jitters at home, trying to make a statement, and they just didn't play a very clean, fundamentally sound football game. Now with an extra week to prepare off that loss, now they play for Chris Jones, and I think they are going to play hard for Chris Jones here, making his return to Edmonton. Remember, Chris Jones, that head coach of the Eskimos the last 2 years, came to Saskatchewan in the offseason to become the head coach and GM. I think you're going to see Saskatchewan play a real motivated football game here. They want to kind of win one here for the Gipper, so to speak. Chris Jones in his return to Edmonton. I think Darian Durant, who was injured early last season, had been out for such a long time, really was shaking off the rust a little bit last week. I think he's going to be better at quarterback. Having a game under his belt should help him offensively and the Saskatchewan team offensively. So I think they're going to play better. And let's not forget, Edmonton's defense has just been absolutely gutted in the offseason with personnel departures, a lot of turnover and change in personnel on the defensive side of the football, new DC as well, and Mike Benavides, new faces on the defensive side of the football, and it showed in their first game for that Edmonton defense, where they were gashed by Ottawa for 45 points and over 500 total yards of offense. I mean, that defense could take some time for Edmonton to come around. Their offense is great. I mean, Mike Riley, they're running an up-tempo, no-huddle offense this season under new head coach Jason Moss. And that offense is probably going to be very good. Every offensive line starter back for Edmonton this season, but their offense to me looks ahead of their defense. And we're talking about Edmonton in this game being asked to lay 10 points, double digits, with a defense that was as leaky as it was for them in week 1. That's kind of tricky to trust them in this kind of price range. And, even though Saskatchewan lost straight up and against the spread last week in their opener against Toronto, Chris Jones still has a sparkling track record, 26-11 straight up, 23-14 against the spread as a CFL head coach. It's going to be it's just a matter of time that Saskatchewan improves, because he's done it everywhere. He's won everywhere he's been. They don't have to win this game in order to cover this number. That's what I like about the price. I think we do get a good effort from Saskatchewan, and with Edmonton's defense and the change on that side of the football, it's going to take time for that defense to come together. They were just absolutely shredded in week 1, and that's not a defense I want to lay 10 points with, that's for sure. So for the play of the week in CFL week 3, let's take Saskatchewan plus 10 against Edmonton. You can find that number currently widely available at all major sports books. We're going to look at Saskatchewan plus 10 as your CFL week 3 play of the week. That's going to wrap things up for this week. I'm sports handicapper Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. That's my look at your CFL Week 3 betting preview. And until next time, enjoy the games and good luck.
Always on the go? Bet365 has one of the top mobile platforms in today's market. Sign up today and don't let your busy life keep you out of the game.